So that's the first thing. But to answer your second part of the question, look, here's what I found. Here's why I developed, Zenith Clubhouse, is because I was baffled by the lack of connection between one success to the other. And what do I mean by that? My first client, John, extraordinary CEO, successful, amazing, very, very good. When you ask his team about his operation, he's like, they're like, man, they're so inspired. One of those people that you look at and you say, John is just masterful, right? And then when I met John, not as a coach, just in life, we belong to an organization called YPO. It's an organization of CEOs around the world. And we met, and when we opened up, he said to me, I'm such a loser. Those are the words he used, right?
Welcome to Sharpen the Spear podcast, where we help manufacturing executives command the front and win the floor. I'm Richard Walsh, creator of the Sharpened Impact methodology, and I spent decades helping leaders transform frontline teams, unlock hidden profit, and capture capacity they didn't even know they had. If you want to see where your leadership gaps are costing you and how to fix them, head over to grittolead.com and run the free Sharpened Impact Simulator today. Let's sharpen your edge and get started. And we are back on STS Sharpen the Spear podcast with another incredible guest. Boaz Gilad's with us today. Boaz, no one knows Boaz as well as Boaz. So Boaz, give us that backstory, and we love your name.
Yeah, sure. It was amazing. Like, you actually said it the right way. Some people, you should listen to when I get a call from like a telemarketer. They always mess it up. So I'm quite impressed to start with. Yeah.
Yes, and that's why you just hang up, because they have no respect for your name. But awesome. Well, thank you. But give us the backstory. Bring us up to speed. We're gonna have an amazing conversation. So let's bring everyone up to where you're at today, and we'll get into it.
Sure, I'll cover some milestones in my life. So, first of all, my name is Boaz, like you said, and I grew up in Israel. It's a very Israeli name. If you read your Bible, you listen to Bible classes, you know the name of the story of Boaz and Ruth. But I grew up in Israel, and I came to New York. That's where I live. I'm in New York City. When I was 21, I'm 54. So I've been in New York for 33 years. I feel more of a New Yorker than anything else, even though you'll hear that accent once in a while, kind of sipping in. And my background, I came to New York to study, to go to school, and I did other things which might we talk about later on till I'm 30. So I was kind of like I studied philosophy in college, and I learned other things. And in my late 20s, I said, you know what, it's time to make some money. And even though I had no background in business, I studied real estate and went through the 2008 crisis, etc. But the bottom line is, I built, I would say, a large size business. I mean, in New York, no one is big, right? Doesn't matter how big you are. Like there's someone bigger than you, which is
Yeah.
that's why we like New York. But I was probably one of the biggest developers, real estate developers in New York. I took my company public. I ran a public company for almost 7 years and left that world about 6 years ago. Now, I left it not because I exited with billions of dollars, but because actually it blew up in my face.
Mm.
And that's a whole rabbit hole we can go down. So I lost everything I had pretty much. I had to go through the bankruptcy process, the whole thing, about 6 years ago. And more to how Richard, you and I connected, I was in a crossroad. I could have gone back to real estate. I didn't burn my name. I had a really good name, even though I had a hustle takeover of my company and it was ended really badly. Uh, but I love teaching, and I taught at NYU grad school in Columbia as a guest professor, etc. And I said, this is an opportunity for me. I published my first book years ago about entrepreneurship and real estate. And I said, maybe I can actually develop that. And I built Zenith, which is the Zenith Clubhouse. It's a performance coach platform. I work with companies, C-level and CEOs to elevate the performance of their business. So that's a very fast. I'm married, I have 3 kids. We can talk about many things, but this is kind of like my elevator pitch of who I am.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah, that's great. That's great accomplishment, and just like you said, I think what a lot of people don't get, Boaz, when they're dealing with businesses, whether they're starting them, running them, scaling them, hitting walls, or now they're either forced to exit, their entire company gets taken away, for numerous different reasons. I had complete failure in 08, 09, right? Lost everything, had to start over. I don't think a lot of people hear too many of those stories, They kind of, it's kind of like social media. It's just highlight reels of all the good
Yes,
stuff.
exactly, Richard. I think that, look, we live in a culture that celebrates success, but doesn't show the sweat it took together. And, and even the illusion, I would say not even celebrating success, I would say celebrating the illusion of success.
Right.
And, not to get political, but go for it. I mean, we have a president that he never admits his failures. And business-wise, forget about how you feel about him. You love him, you hate him, but he
Mhm.
failed numerous times. But when he speaks, and for me, it's an indication of what's happening in the culture. Everybody follows Instagram and seeing the guy in the Lamborghini or the private jet. But first of all, I don't know if it's true or not. Second thing is, no one really talks about what it took for them, the sweat, the tears, the blood, to get them to be successful. So everybody wants that instant crypto sales success, but they don't deal with the what it will to take actually to be successful.
So, so here's the thing about that, because I see it again when you're looking at the success. To me, they're always presenting it backwards. Okay. They're showing them by a jet, and halftime they just went out to an airport and they're standing by a jet and they take their picture, pretend like they're getting on there or something. They're not. So what? But I'm not going to be. I'm a little cynical
Yes.
because I've seen all the nonsense, right? But really, it's the story, it's the failures, the missteps, the overcoming, the grit it takes to get through that. That's what's worth listening to. So a lot of these people, when you see them just with the flash all the time and the new ride and all this stuff, I'm like, I don't. I, to me, this is how I think. But a lot of people think like, well, I can never have that, till they're pitching like I'm this or that and follow me. But like, I, I'm not going to follow someone who I only see the glory. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I want to
Yeah,
see
I
you. I
think
want
no,
to see when you got
absolutely.
punched in the face.
But I think here's the difference. I think that when I mean, you failed, I failed, and we're proud of it because what made us who we are, what brought us so far, is our failures.
Yes.
And I think when you're uncomfortable or insecure, you will spend your time covering over your failures. Except for that, that's how does it work. If you look at athletes, look like scientists. I mean, can you imagine developing medication for cancer and saying I will never fail in the process? I mean, by design, when scientists sit there, they will try something and fail and try and fail and try and fail. Eventually, they're like what's called a breakthrough, something like there's a jump, a quantum leap in understanding of a problem, and then you get the drugs that you were looking for and worked on for 10 years. So I think it's an illusion to think that one can move from one success to the other without diving into the failures.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite sayings is, every overnight success only took 10 years.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that's, I always, I have 6 kids and raise my kids. And I always tell them, I say, listen, there's fame and fortune. I go, focus on the fortune. I say, just forget about the fame. Okay.
Yes.
It's a
Yeah.
bad road to go down. You
Yeah.
don't have to show anyone what you're doing or anything. Just do your thing. I'm like that. I'm just doing my thing.
And
Just
look, some
focus.
people, if you listen to the story of Mark Zuckerberg, people say the joke is that he raised the money for Facebook on Silicon Valley in a robe because he was already like doing so well. Like he's like, oh, just throw money my way. Fine, I'm not that smart. Okay, maybe you are, maybe the person listening is. So you can either hold on to one in a 10,000 stories of someone who got the instant success, got the results right away. And by the way, Mark works extremely hard. So it's not just that you have, but let's
Mhm.
just say you have this like unbelievable breakthrough. You're an actor, you walk on the street, someone's paused and says, Stop, Richard, you the one I want for my next movie. Maybe, right? But it's one every 10,000, 100,000. And what a waste of time looking for that one in 10,000 versus actually doing the work that needs to be done to be successful.
Yeah, you'll get there sooner.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm always about the work. But I think what people, since you're a performance guy, you're coaching people and doing that, and I really like that aspect, especially at the higher levels. And I've coached athletes from professionals down to middle school, right? So I understand different levels and elements and how to get the most out of someone. And when we think about business, it's easier today than back. I've been 35 years in business. Okay. A little more. So back in the day, there were no coaches. Okay. There was no internet. It was cool. So we couldn't have done this. Okay. But but it was, when you think about it, it's like now you have access to experts who can, and again, they span the globe, they span the scale from great to below mediocre, right? So
Yeah.
it's all that, but
Yeah.
you can really take advantage of things and compress time and accelerate your journey if you know who to get in touch with, right? If you know who to hire, if you know who to get around. I think that's a big aspect. Do you find that, even though you're
Yes.
dealing C-suite and everything else, you're like, these are top achievers, but how do you get them next level?
So there's two things. So let's just address the first thing you said. Now, um, it's extraordinary the availability of things around us. I mean, I'm concerned about something, or I want to do something. I just go on YouTube, or a ChatGPT. I mean, forget about that. But I'm just saying, put this aside for a second. Like the availability of information is extraordinary. But there's two part to it. One is, look, we used to have coaches. When you 200 years ago, if you wanted to learn something, your dad and your mom, your family dropped you with someone when you were 13, 14 years old, and you worked for the same guy, the same family for 5 years, just walking around them, right? And learning what the tool is. And the agreement was like, look, I'll give you food and I'll teach you the mastery of this. So it's going to take 10, 15, 20 years, and you become master and you're going to, help me. That was kind of the agreement of people. And then the thing is, we moved into the 20th century, we lost that. It became very exactly what you said, like you didn't have really coaches, you didn't have access to information. So you were taught whatever, either you faked it till you made it, or you kind of like just kind of didn't really have an ability to excel properly. The challenge of on the other side of it, there's so much information right now, and what you said is exactly true. Like, look, how do I find the right person to work with? Because one of the challenges, I always make jokes of it. I always have I kind of like I get stopped when people say, "What do you do?" Like I'm a coach, right? Because coach is one of those things like when any business person goes through a midlife crisis, or not just business person, any person goes through a midlife crisis, like, oh, what do you do? I'm a life coach. I mean, like, okay, why should I listen to you? Like, so
Yeah.
the word coach, like, unfortunately, there's no true, like a doctor, you gotta go to med school, right? Like even if you're a bad doctor, like has to have
Yep.
something on the wall says you went to med school. Coach, anyone can take a course or written, someone call himself a life coach. So I think the challenge is to find, like you said, the right people, right? So that's the first thing. But to answer your second part of the question, look, here's what I found. Here's why I developed, Zenith Clubhouse, is because I was baffled by the lack of connection between one success to the other. And what do I mean about that? My first client, John, extraordinary CEO, successful, amazing, very, very good. When you ask his team about his operation, he's like, they're like, man, they're so inspired. One of those people that you look at and you say, John is just masterful, right? And then when I met John, not as a coach, just in life, we belong to an organization called YPO. It's an organization of CEOs around the world. And we met, and when we opened up, he said to me, I'm such a loser. Those are the words he used, right? He used another word before that, some F word, but I won't mention it now. I said, why, John? You're so successful. And he said, I'm 300 pounds and I can't manage it. So there's no judgment for me. Like, you be whoever makes you happy, right? But here is one person who, on one side of his life, one element of his life, he's a top performer. He is a CEO, he's on top of things, he's extraordinary. And then on another area of your life, he's not. And he has all those excuses. He's like, well, I live on planes, I travel a lot, I stay in hotels all the time, food is my comfort. But when he looks at the mirror, he says, I'm a loser, right? And I got baffled. I was like fascinated by how is that he doesn't take the tools from business into his personal life. Like he's so good at it, right? Like, what's the big deal? The KPIs, right? If you run businesses, it's like, what's the measurable things you have to hit? The same with your health and fitness. So I started to like have conversation with extremely successful people, asking them, what is the gap between what they're very good at and what they're really not good at. And we develop a whole methodology about how to implement one area of your life into another area because we're all good at something. You can be extraordinary parent, could be extraordinary business person, extraordinary. You're like, I meet people who are barely can keep the business open, but when you look at their like their regimen around workout, they're an inspiration. They like run marathons. They feel like nothing. I'm like, how the hell do you have this commitment to do that? And then when it comes to your business, you're completely lacking of it. And that's the conversation to have.
It's interesting because I was talking with a gentleman about a month ago. We're talking about something similar, right? Like people who they're really good at their business, right? Like this guy really leads well, can't get their kids to do a thing, can't lead their family, can't lead their wife, or whatever. Like it's leadership. You run a multi-billion-dollar company, but home is a chaos, and no
Yeah.
one will even take out the trash when you ask them. You know what I mean? It's like so it's not they're not equal, and it doesn't cross over because they're different like environments almost, right? And I love the correlation between nutrition and fitness and in business. We see that a lot. They always say that you spend all your time building the business, making that money, and neglect your health. Then you spend all your money and your time trying to get your health back. Same kind of thing. But you're exactly right. And bringing and crossing over those, if someone has the capability like you do to bring it over, like you got to connect it. Sometimes they just don't connect it.
Yeah.
They
And
just
connection is a good beginning, right? So you have to connect to start with. So the conversations start with you realizing that you do have those muscles, you just don't implement them in the right place. That's the first beginning. But then the next thing is actually you do the work. So, realization is not sufficient. What do I mean by that? Like, look, I'll give a very simple example. Um, Smoking is bad. Right? I mean, there's no one in the world who goes like, really? I didn't know that. I mean, in the last 50 or 70 years, we learned that smoking is bad for you, right? So the fact that and still there's millions of people, hundreds of million people smoking, right? So it's sometimes knowledge is important. You have to understand that, smoking is bad for you, but it's not sufficient to change the way you behave, right? So you start with understanding, but then there have to be a path and a tools and procedures and practice to now change the nature of behavior and stop being a smoker. So the same thing with this. You understand that, oh my gosh, I'm using it in one area of my life, I'm not using it. Fine, great. You have an insight. Now what are you going to do with it?
Yeah, I think that's critical because thinking about it isn't enough. Okay, so I had this little equation I created: is D plus A minus E times C equals results. So it's desire plus action. Okay, desire is just on the pillow. It's a dream. Okay,
Yep.
action minus the E is excuses times the C is competition.
Mm.
Okay, because you're competing against something or someone, yourself, or whatever that is. You put those things together, that's how you begin to get results. A lot of people have desire. Graveyard's full of them.
Yep.
Okay, full of lots of desires that no one ever took action on. You've got to take that action. But like you're saying, I think what's important to understand is there's got to be some method. There has to be a methodology of sorts to achieve that, whether it's quitting smoking, quitting eating bad food, exercising regularly, whatever it is.
Building a business, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
And I
it's
think, and I think what to kind of connect to what you said earlier, the action is something people don't speak about enough. They want the desire and they want the results, but they don't want to talk about the action. And the
right,
reality is, I listened to one of your podcasts. You said you go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week, right? I guarantee you, Richard, without really knowing you well, right, that you don't feel inspired to go to the gym every day. There's days when it's cold
no.
or it's like dark, whatever. You're like, what the hell? I have to drag my ass to the gym. But you took the action because in the big picture, you understand what it takes to get the body or the health that you're looking for. So people in instant world, in Instagram, and social media, and like they want the results, they don't want to take the actions. And
Right.
and and that person you talked about that has kids that are not doing anything and they're successful because they're taking a lot of action around their business, but they're not actually taking actions and focus and programming around their family.
Yeah. So let's talk about this because everything is choice. Okay. It's priority. It's choice. You decide to do or not do,
Yep.
whether you do it consciously or unconsciously. Okay. That's the whole thing. Um, so how does that fit in your, I'll call it programming because I don't have a better word for it right now, but
Sure.
the program of getting these people from point A to point B, super successful here. but really low level over here, and they need to bring that end up. We already have the desire. Okay, they want to do it, but like it's taking those first steps and then continuing those, getting into a pattern of consistency that's I find so difficult for people
Mm.
and me.
Yeah. Look, I think the most important thing to start with is understanding what's really important to you. Sometimes we say things that are important to us, and then when I look at your calendar, it doesn't reflect what's really important to you. So I think there's a deeper understanding. So you say, I'm really committed. We started with health and fitness. Let's just stick with it, okay? So you say, I'm really committed to a healthy body and and feeling great about myself. Okay, open your calendar. Show me how many hours a week have you spent on it? Well, I'm gonna get to it. I'm finishing this new thing. I'm working and okay, so you're full of it. Just and look, the good thing about being a New Yorker, I can call my clients. I'll be like, "You're
Right.
full of it," like that's the New York way of delivering. I know you're much nicer than that. Um,
Well, I'm Chicago. I just say
exactly,
it a
that's
little
true.
differently. I say it
Yeah,
about the same thing.
exactly, that's true. Exactly. So I think first of all, you get really clear. And by the way, there is nothing wrong with going through the process and saying, you know what, I thought it's important to me. It's actually not important to me.
Right.
There's no judgment on my from my perspective. It's about what you're committed to in your life. So if you get to a place where you're like, you know what, actually my health is not important. Enjoy that chocolate cake. Really. The problem is that we order the chocolate cake, we take a bite. The first bite we're like, oh, this is delicious. But the second bite we start to kick in and say, oh my gosh, did I froze, Richard?
I can still hear you fine. Keep
Okay,
going.
perfect. Okay, the picture froze, but okay, as
Yeah.
long as you can hear me, that's okay. Who cares about the picture? Sorry. So you take this bite of the chocolate cake, and the second bite is like, oh, I'm such a loser. I can't believe why I'm eating so much. I said I'm not gonna eat flour. I said I'm not gonna eat sugar as much. Blah blah blah. So you stop even enjoying it. So the first most important thing to do is get really clear what's important to you. Okay. So now, if it's actually important to you, then the next thing to do is understand that you don't live in La La Land. If your action don't correlate with your commitment, you live in La La Land. You think you'll be able to have a successful business and you don't spend hours on it? Not going to happen. So one is get what's really important to you. Second thing is get really clear that there's, unfortunately or fortunately, I think it's good news, but some people hear it in the beginning it's bad news, is that if your action do not match with your commitment, then you live in La La Land. Now the question is, what's your commitment? And I'll give you an example, like riding the Tour de France. Okay, I love cycling. That's my hobby, right? I cycle on the weekend for 3, 4 hours. I do Peloton twice a week in the, 3 times a week in the winter, right? It's not sufficient. It's actions, right? Someone says, "Oh, that's wonderful. You're keeping you're being healthy and you're keeping in shape." Fine, but it doesn't. Those actions don't correlate with a commitment to be in the Tour de France.
Right.
So now the question is of what game you want to play, right? There's no wrong or right. There's no like, do you want to play the game of I'm 54 and I want to be in shape and feel great about myself? Or do you want to play the game of I want to win the Tour de France? Different games. Not one is better than the other. And now are the action correlate with the game you want to play?
Yeah, I love it. I used to row a lot, especially on the indoor rower on the ergonomic. And me and two buddies every Saturday during the week, we trained hard. We trained hard, hard, hard. Right. So here's the thing people tell us, because I mean, it's crazy if you watch how hard we went. Like you couldn't walk when we got done. And I'm like, well, we're not Olympians, but we train like Olympians.
Mhm.
That's our whole thing. It's like we want to train like one. We're not one. We're not going to be one, but we want to
Yep,
train like one.
exactly. Well, if you have the ability and the commitment to train like Olympians, that's amazing. And one of the things I find when I work with people is that they don't have the team to operate a top performance. So what do I mean by that? If you look at, Olympic players, even if they're players who play a solo game, whatever the, tennis or something like that, right? There's an entire team around them. Do they have the right massage therapists and coaches and nutritionists and all that stuff? So again, La La Land, right? You think you want to play on Olympic level, and then you don't have a team around you. And Richard, I'm just pointing to the fact that my camera is off completely. So I don't know if it's, but as long as you can
Oh,
hear me, that's fine. YouTube,
yeah, I can hear you
tough
great.
luck.
No
Okay.
worries.
Okay.
No, I think you're right though, Boaz. I think what's important to understand is, it's you seldom like I'm a boxer, right? So boxer love hitting the bag and I pretty much train by myself, and I go really, really hard. But I guarantee you, when one of my sons, who I've trained also, comes and works out with me, I go even harder. Okay. Any training partner, regardless of like whoever makes, I always had my kids when I trained them, I would train my son, we're going to the junior Olympics. I got him a training partner, who's close, who'd push them. And they just, that inspiration, that ability to connect with someone else and compete against them was a huge benefit, right? People don't understand that, right? You have to have this team, like you said, whether it's massage therapists, trainers, you got the whole package, right? Every one of those is contributing to your success, right? They're doing the little things. And the more you train, again, I know we've been a lot on the fitness thing here, but the more you train, the harder you train, the more unique your workouts become. Guess who's getting injured? You're gonna okay,
Yeah.
you're gonna get injured. But when you got the right team, it's temporary, right? They fix it, they correct it. We can figure out what went wrong or whatever. But that's part of training.
Yeah.
You
So
you
I
gotta
think
have.
I think the question is, what's the level you want to play on? That's one of the
Right.
things I ask my clients when I work with them, when I work with a team, especially I work mainly in workshops, not as much as one-on-one, and with a team of C-level or CEOs. And the question I ask them, are you really clear? And I ask them to be clear, but what's the level you want to play on? Because again, there's nothing wrong with just having a bag in your garage and kind of punch a little bit. But if you want to be in the ring, it's a different level of training. It's a
That's right.
different level of team around you. And again, and then see the gap. See what you committed to versus what the team that you have around you and the commitment you have to that level.
Yeah, exactly. I love that point. It really, I think it is the commitment. Where is your level of commitment to what? What do you actually want to do with this? If you just, and I see people at the gym every day, they are checking a box or walking on a treadmill or on the elliptical or doing whatever they do. And it's the same thing. And it's never hard. It never varies anything else. They're just checking a box. Totally okay. Okay. They're
If
good
that's
with
what
that.
they exactly, if that's the game they want to play, that's totally fine.
That's right. And if you think about it, usually those people will do that for 30 years. Okay. Like they're more consistent than you'll be at the high intensity workouts every day, right? Because eventually you're going to break. But
Yeah.
like it's really interesting because I'm kind of like the up and down because you have to. I have to cycle, right? I can do very very difficult for a period of time, then I have to back off, then come back, and that whole thing. But I have seen people who have been members of gyms for literally 40 years. 50, I mean, they like every day, Monday through Friday, they're at the gym doing their thing. And it's that you can't outbeat them on the consistency,
Mm.
you
But,
know?
but Richard, just to challenge that thinking, and I agree with what you're saying, but here's, uh, it happens in businesses. I see it very often in businesses, but also it happens in life. I told, I have an aging mother, and I said to her, look, um, life is like standing on an escalator. You're standing, right? But the reality is there's an ongoing decline. The escalator is going down, not going up, right? So if you're doing the same thing in the gym every day and you're 25 or you're 65, it's no longer sufficient to keeping even staying. I mean, you have to walk against the escalator direction. So the same with business. I can't tell you how many businesses I work with that come to me and say, look, we're second or third generation business and there's a stagnation in our business because my grandfather was an amazing starter and he started and he gave everything to the business and then my dad took over and now it's my turn and we're doing the same thing but you're standing on a escalator, you're going down so you have to constantly keep on increasing the speed to catch up to just stay in the same place you are. So again, that's kind of the image I always use, the escalator.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. I could never like be steady. Like do the same thing I can't. I have to push myself. That includes business too. I have to do I'm doing the biggest thing of my life right now. And I've done a lot of really incredible things and stuff, but I am on the biggest journey of my life now. Spent the last year and a half building this. Now we're launching. It's like it's absolutely spectacular because I can't settle for the escalator.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm like,
And it's
we
definitely
got the
probably,
moving
I'm sure it's
sidewalk at
out of
the
your comfort
airport. I'm
zone,
walking
right?
on the road. On
Yeah. And it's out of your comfort zone, Richard. There's no doubt about it, right?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where it's at. And it just for me, because people ask me too, even at the gym, why I train so hard. Like, are you fighting? And I'm like, no. I got plates and wires, new nose. I got all kinds of stuff in my head. I can't get in the ring anymore. It's like, what are you training for? I go to stay dangerous.
Yeah.
That's what I train for. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm a dangerous gentleman. That's what I am.
You're more like I think like a gentle bear, but okay, I'll take you on as a you look you come across as a gentle bear, but I think it's about how you feel about yourself, right? So like that I'm a dangerous, I have the ability, right? Is what
Right.
gives you power, gives you, and again, it spills to other areas. So when you walk into a business meeting, you went to a coaching meeting, that personality that you experiencing of yourself in the ring training will come and spill into other areas.
I love you said that. That is a huge takeaway. Okay. People, I wish more people understood that, Boaz, because it matters. They don't put these things together like you just did. Right. What I do in the gym, okay, as far as I go, is a reflection of what I'm doing in business, what I do with my family, and it's really interesting when people get to know you and there is that, they don't have to know what I do in the gym, but they know I do something. Okay. There's no question. Like this guy, well, he goes, I don't know what he does, but I'm sure he does something,
Yep.
because a
Yep.
guy his age, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's really important to understand the correlation of all our actions too, right? It kind of goes, it's a two-way street, right?
Like you can be a jerk at work and then come home and be a saint with your family. It just doesn't work.
Right.
Everything you do spills over, and sometimes for a short period of time you can compartmentalize areas of your life. But the reality is, how you train is how you run your business. How you run your business, how you interact with your kids, how you like it. And again, it's about building those bridges and understandings and cognitive connection between those areas.
Yeah, super important. I think, yeah, there's a little bit of intensity to me that kind of goes into everything I do. I just don't have and it's who I am. I'm not angry. I'm not violent or anything like that. I have those capabilities, right? But all my stuff is under restraint because of how I train and what I do. But I can't, I'm not a fan of mediocrity. Okay. Like I won't look at mediocrity. I won't deal with mediocrity. I won't deal with people who don't have drive. I often tell people you can't motivate the unmotivated.
Yeah.
Okay. If you go to a motivational conference, the only people there are the people who are already motivated.
Yeah, yeah, that's great, Richard, because here's my I led workshops for thousands of people over the years when I was still in real estate. And I found that 80% of the room are junkies of inspiration. The problem with inspiration, I always say it, it's like sugar. You get very excited and come on, let's go. And then the moment the sugar rush passes, then you go back to the couch. And I caught myself spending 80% of the time on those people, trying to get them off the couch. And there was a moment when I said, you know what, I'm done. I'm going to work with top performers. I'm going to work with that 20% of the room or 10% of the room that actually will do what it takes. Now, they might not have the tools, they might not know how to, but they have that drive. And 80% of the room say that, look, again, if you don't have the drive, fine, live it, enjoy, have the best time on the couch. But they walk around saying, I want this, I want that, but they're not willing to do the work, as to connect to what we said earlier. So yeah, exactly like you said, 80% of people just want the glory without the guts.
But tell me this though, when you refocus on that 10-20%, how much better did your life and your coaching business, everything else get?
It was I think the word is transformational.
Right.
Because I used to walk. Look, Richard, the reason you do it the way I do it, we love people. We love to see results in other people's life. That's, I mean, fundamentally great coaches. and consultants and advisors love seeing the success of others, right? And I caught myself walking out from very intense works, very frustrated and very upset because I measured the overall group. And again, 80% of them just waiting for, they're like basically, and by the way, they become inspirational junkies. They buy more and more books about self-help and they listen to more and more podcasts, but they don't do shit, you know? So I'm saying I walked away going frustrated. And when there was a shift for me and say, look, love them for where they are. And if they're willing to step up, the door is always open. But focus on the 20% who's actually committed to getting the results and having an extraordinary life. And extraordinary means like literally out of the ordinary life, you know? So out of the ordinary life, then suddenly I was like, oh, it's freedom. And I can buy the action. Also, it fits to my style because I can be more demanding. Can be like, oh, you want extraordinary? Let's get to work.
Yeah, it's just it is rewarding. There's those people, there's action takers and there's not, and it's imperfect action. One thing we always talk about, I always encourage anyone I work with, it doesn't need to be perfect. You just have to take the action. Action alleviates anxiety. Imperfect action wins the day, because you're going to get way further than the guy who went back to the couch. Like you said, had the sugar high, then he's back down. And that's most people. Yeah, they get all keyed up, but they can't live it throughout the week.
They're
We do that
scared.
often.
Richard, they're
And
scared. They're
yeah,
scared of failing. I really
yeah,
truly believe when you actually sit with someone who says, I want to have that extraordinary relationship, or I want that successful restaurant, or I want to have that business, that construction business doing very, very well. You know, when actually you dive deeper, what runs their life is fear. So one of the things that I worked on for many years is developing a lot of compassion. Now, it doesn't mean I need to stay in that space that they're in, which is the space of fear and worried. And because, look, I have fear. All humans have fears, but I don't manage by fear, right? I manage my fear versus fear manages me. But 80% of the room, they get inspired, but then they get scared. They get scared. They get worried. They say, oh my gosh, I won't make it. And what if I lose everything? And what if I do all this work and I look like a fool? And, you know, it's sad.
no, I'm with you. I see a lot of people that's what holds them back. It's themselves, and you brought up a good point with in the beginning with the 300 pound, great business guy. It's the same thing. If you really dug deep on that, the reason they're not doing that is there's a fear. Okay, there's a lot of he mentions some it's comfort, it's this, is this. It's emotional eating, it's all this kind of stuff. They have the reasons, the excuses, if you will, right? But really there's a fear, even a fear of success.
You know?
You can be really high in the business world, but personally, your success, because we were talking about this earlier, right? Your success physically, is not there. But when you look at what it might take, because you don't get that big overnight, okay, and you're certainly not going to get small overnight, right? So when I tell people, I go, well, you've been this way for 18 years or 20 years, I go, okay, you got really good at it. Okay, we are talking about mastery earlier.
Yeah.
You spent 18 years of getting unhealthy. You're like a pro,
You have
right?
mastered the muscle called unhealthy.
That's right.
And if you spend a much like first of all, that's so important, Richard, because people have, again, we talk a lot today about illusions, right? So people have a misconception or an illusion. It took you 18 years to get to where you are, right? Do you think, I'm not saying it took 18 years, but do you think within 3 months you're gonna get to like being in shape? No, because it took you for 18 years you've been working out the muscle called unhealthy eating, unhealthy behavior, unhealthy, training. So now have some compassion again to yourself. Understand that it's going to take you. Now you have to work on a new muscle called healthy.
Yeah, you've got, and there's discipline, there's you what happens from health when you've been down there 15 years, what you've actually lived in is instant gratification, self gratification. That's the world you live in. That's what food does. So you're grabbing the candy bar. I always make fun of it. I go, listen, I'm at the hardware store. I'm checking out. There's a whole candy aisle, like at the checkout counter. I'm here to buy screws and a hammer. or something. It's like, I mean, there's just sugar everywhere, right? So there's always a temptation, but you reach it and you get it. It's self gratification, right? It's instant gratification. They want that. So,
But it's penny foolish.
yeah, and right, and it's all about it. There's a mindset shift. I mean, it's way deeper than people realize, right? It's not the snap of the fingers and just stop doing that. Okay, and you know this from the coaching levels that you're at, especially. And some people will think, oh well, Boaz just trains these high achievers, so it's not really that hard. It's actually probably more difficult,
Yes.
wouldn't you say? Because when someone's got a high level of achievement in one area and they're lacking in the other, okay, there's a lot of work to do there. Because if there isn't, they would have already done it.
Yes. So there's two part to it. One is, first of all, my door or our program is open to anyone, right? So it's not like I'm saying, oh, if you're not that top, you can get it. But I found, and we spoke about it, found that 80% of people say they want to do it, but they don't want to do the work. So top performance is, first of all, studies the state of mind more than anything else, right? But you're right. The more you go to the top of the pyramid, whether you deal with athletes, so it's so funny we spoke about it became a conversation about athletes versus business, but it's the same thing. Um,
Right.
the more you have to work more laser focused versus like big strokes. It's easy if you look if you are very 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 heavy, you're 300 pounds, you're not healthy. Losing 10 pounds, it's extraordinary. Good for you, congratulations. But it's much easier than if you're 170 pounds, gotta lose 10 pounds and get muscles and stuff. Because not by now it's like laser. It has to be very specific. So many challenges I deal with when I deal with the top CEOs, with people who run $100 million companies, is that they're so good in one area and they're saying their cup is so full, it's hard to work with them because like, oh, I already know that. Well, well, you paying me a lot of money to work with you, so I guess you don't know. And second thing is now we have to work with an exacto knife of how to carve out what you really committed to.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's got to be so targeted because that's how they perform. We would do that at high level athletes too. It's like we're trying to get the tiniest bit of improvement because that's a difference between a first and second place. It's little tiny things. Whether it's running or football or hockey or whatever the game is. It's like and those are difficult to pull out of them. And I've seen super gifted athletes, okay, who don't work hard.
Hmm.
They just ride their talent. Then I see, matter of fact, I made this hoodie for my son when we were training for the Junior Olympics and all this stuff, and it says, "We outwork your talent every day." I just put that on shirts and everything. It's like this is our motto. Okay,
Yeah,
I don't care how talented you are, man. We're gonna work hard, but no matter what, we work, and we're gonna
it's
outwork
not
you and you
sustainable.
and you. What's that?
Yeah, Richard, it's not sustainable. If you are very talented, it might take you a particular level. And if you're talking about sport, you might be 26 and still riding your tail. But if you look at the top people, you look at Kobe, like the Michael Jordan, all people, they work so hard every day, every day, every day.
Yes.
And the talent will take you. And most of look, if you see someone who's brilliant in something, by the time they're 24, they're injured,
Yep.
they have other issues because they were riding that tail, like you said, tail of talent. It's a short-lived way. And we forget about us, we're old, but our kids, they're gonna live till they're 120 with everything that's happening with education and like they have a whole life. It's thinking about someone who's 24 and running out of talent. He has or she has another 100 years probably, to live.
Yeah, and the problem is, okay, all they were was riding on talent. They don't know how to work. That next 80 years of their life, it's going to be spent in depression
Yeah.
because they haven't learned unless they learn the skill, but they don't understand the work ethic, the grit that it takes to get, big things done, and stay in that game. So you're exactly right. I think that's what one thing I've instilled in my kids is just that you just work. Like they're all workers. Like, man, we
Yeah.
we put in the time, we do it, we know what it takes, right? You have to go through it. I'll push you through it. It's all good. But they look at me, a guy who's 60, and I'm still in the gym and I'm rocking stuff. I'm like, this is by choice. I just go there because this is a good thing. So they've all kind of adapted that. One of my sons in the Marine Corps and
Oh,
super fit and everything else, and they're all great, right? But you have to, for me, as an example aspect, I had to do what I say, right? I couldn't just tell them they should work out. I'm like doing it. And I've had my periods where I'm not, where I mean, 20 years ago, I really slipped. Talk about 300 pounds. I hit that mark. No, I hit 299. That's my only saving grace. I say I didn't quite tip it at 300, Boaz, but I hit 299, and I'm a big guy and everything, but that was too big.
Yeah.
Okay. And I finally said, nope, no more, and I just, started that road. Had to get
And
back
you
on the
probably,
road.
yeah,
And the road back is never fun for anybody. I don't care what you were or how fit you were at one point. When you have to start over again and make their, it's just misery. So embrace it.
yeah, absolutely makes sense, and it's it's unfortunately some people have to hit rock bottom, whatever rock bottom for you is to wake up.
Yep.
And one of the things I'm committed to is to provide the thinking process, I would call it, to start with. You don't have to hit rock bottom. You don't have to go through a major car accident before you come home and tell your kids that you love them and your wife or significant other. You don't have to go through losing your business before you roll your sleeve and saying, where am I wasting money? What employees are the wrong employees for me? I have the wrong partner, or my business plan is off. There's no reason. You can actually um, simulate the crisis without going through the crisis. And unfortunately, most people don't. You had to hit 299 to be like, I am in danger. Whether it was your doctor looking at you and you look at your kids like, I'm not going to be around for my grandchildren to play with me if I'm going to keep on that route. I'm going to get a heart attack. And that so let's get those people to turn around and do the hard work, like you said, before they hit that kind of bottom.
It's funny. So I was one of those, I call them doc in the box. You like go for like an urgent care place, but I had to
Yeah.
get this checkup. And this when I was like the 299. So I'm sitting there on the little thing, and this doctor comes in who's no vision of health himself. Okay. So he goes, well, you're
Welcome to America.
right,
Exactly.
right, exactly. He was probably just got done having a cigarette. But he looks at me and he goes, well, your blood pressure's a little high. And then he kind of looks me up and down and he goes, and you know why. That was, and I'm like, because and I took that hit. That's okay, but I also took solace in he can tell that's not who I've always been.
Yeah. And
You know what I
that
mean? So it
exactly,
was kind of
Richard.
cool.
Yeah, so to just double click on this one. People say it all the time, but the other people don't hear it. You heard it. So
Right.
people say, look, your business is not doing very well, or your health, you're scared, like your mother or your significant other says, look, I'm really worried about you, but we don't hear it, right?
Right.
So there was a moment in that doctor's office, he said to you, you know why? You heard it. And
Yeah.
and that was the moment of change, not the fact that people said it. People say stuff all the time to us. We just don't hear it. Either we don't have the capacity, we don't have the ability, we don't have the interest to hear it, or we're too busy listening to ourselves. I'm fine. I'm going to turn around next week, whatever it is. The conversation internally is louder than what people actually say to us.
And you know what it was? It was, and just the way I said it just like he said, and you know why? I'm like, it triggered this disappointment in myself. That's what it was. It wasn't like, I don't remember his name, but I'm like, there was a disappointment. Like I let myself get this way. Okay. Like that's done. Like I'm not doing that. I'm the, I'm my own greatest disappointment, so
Yeah.
that was a big thing. But you're right. You hear it again. We often, when our spouses say things, we seldom, take that to heart. And it's just, I don't know. It's the nature of being married, I guess. I don't know, but it seems like you need that third party validation,
And
you know?
you heard the calling. There was a calling, right? The calling was get your act together. You're going a
Right.
route that's going to be very dangerous. You won't be around. So you heard that calling, whether it's your son in the Marine or your health or a business opportunity if someone sees, when you hear the calling, that's the first step. And then you take the action. Exactly like you said earlier, like it's not enough just to hear the calling. The calling is the beginning of taking actions.
Right.
You know?
Right. So good. So good. Yeah. There's a proactivity about life. Okay, whether you're in business and your health and your overall your life, everything, all the I call it, faith, family, finances, fitness, and friendships, the five F's. Okay. Those five areas all have to have a proactivity towards them to have any kind of I'm air quoting success or accomplishment in all those areas, right? If you're heavy on one, I don't mean they're equal. What I mean though is like there has to be intention on those areas. There has to be a proactivity to do that. Like you said, when you mentioned about like my business, I had big hitter clients who were giving me warnings about my business, giving me advice that I refused to take, because I just didn't think they know what I did, even though they were billionaires. Okay. So there's just a point where you have to have that proactive mind that brings it in, and actually you have to be open to counsel, hear it, weigh it out. Does this actually, like you said, can I catch this early? I didn't have to lose my business. Okay. But for a lot of reasons, I'm the one who destroyed that, right? I was so full of ego and pride and my identity in my business. I started making all kinds of wrong decisions to save a business because it was who I am. It had nothing to do with running a business well. It was just trying to keep it afloat. So again, when you're not taking counsel, when you don't have a good coach, when you don't have the right people around you, the right team, you're going to make all kinds of bad decisions, and it's just going to just speed your demise.
Yeah, right on. Exactly. Well, it really depends on how committed you are to have an extraordinary life. And then areas of your life when you want to be extraordinary, go for it. And if not, and do the work and find the team and the coaches and the infrastructure. And if not, then let it be and just be happy with it.
Yeah. Settle for mediocrity. Yeah.
No,
It's
but Richard, truly believe that if you are, look, if you want to work for the post office and you love it, or at least you love the lifestyle it gives you, that you don't have to think about after work, you go home at 4 p.m., you play your guitar, you hang out with your friends. There's no judgment. No one says we need to have extraordinary results in a life in every element of your life. I'm not judging if you work for the post office, but I have a problem if you work for the post office and then you sit there go like, I should be a millionaire, or I should do this, and I should open a business. Okay, that's where my problem. My problem is in the gap, not in judging what you want to do.
right. Yeah, I love it. That's a great distinction, for sure. Again, well, let's say I'm envious of that person who can work at the post all day, then go home and play his guitar or play the piano, hang out, have a nice meal, go back and do that. Like I might be, part of me is envious. I can't settle for that. And I also appreciate him for not making it crowded up where I'm at. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So I
You know,
just, I have
there's,
an appreciation for both. I truly
yes,
do. I'm just
yes.
not that.
And there's a curse and a blessing. I always there's one of the curse of entrepreneurs, and I think it's also a blessing, is that we are never satisfied. We have
Right.
moments of satisfaction. We have moments of satisfaction, but we're never truly satisfied. And I found as I got older, as I lost my business, that I have to find those moments of pure satisfaction. It doesn't have to be in the business, but I have to pause and really celebrate what I've accomplished and not be so busy with what I've not accomplished. Because when I was at the peak of my career, I made a lot of money, drove a nice Porsche, had a well-known, business, etc. I spent 90% of my time not being happy because I was like, I constantly saw where the gap is, where it's lacking in my business, in my employees, in my team, et cetera, right? And I did not spend any time on actually celebrating what I've accomplished. So that's the curse. But that's also the blessing because that's what makes us successful because we know always want more and more and more. So you gotta find those moments, whether it's a 1 minute or 5 minutes or a day, when you actually can pause and celebrate the accomplishment. Because if not, what's the point? We're all gonna end the same. We're all gonna one day, drop dead and that's it.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think even when you're building something, there has to be these moments. You have to really measure milestones. I think that's one thing I've done in the last year and a half is I've literally journaled them. I hit this, I'm struggling, it's super hard what I'm doing. And then all of a sudden, that little breakthrough, right? And you get the next level. And like, we'll record that, record the milestone. After struggling for 3.5 months, whatever, blah, we did this. After 375 hours, this broke through, and then I spent over 4,000 hours building this thing, and then all of a sudden, I get the best breakthrough that is I never even thought of. There's a whole complete thing I missed, and I celebrate that, right? So I keep doing that, And now, everything else is opening up. Now we're out launching, and it's amazing. So you're right. You have to log these milestones in this journey, because I do want more, right? I want to make it better, and I want to do more, be more, get more, all that stuff. Not in a greed sense, but to me, there's levels of accomplishment in ways I can serve people. So
Yeah.
what I'm bringing to the marketplace, I want all these people to have access to, because what it can do for their businesses and for them personally. So there's a drive there, but it doesn't matter if it's like, you can take it however you want. There's the drive for just money, but there's also drive for serving and helping change people's lives and everything else. I mean, people get they get their joy from different things, right?
Yeah.
Mine's serving others,
Yeah.
making other
It's
people's
so it's so
lives better and
interesting.
bringing this to the industry.
Yeah. It's so interesting. It's I have a book, right? And it's a kind of workbook. And I found with clients when I actually implement the book, that the most difficult chapter people skip over is not what I expected when I wrote the book. I wrote the book based on the workshops we run. And here's the funny thing, or like the fascinating thing that point to what you just said. The most skipped chapter is what's called celebration. People, especially if they're hungry, they don't pause and celebrate. It's like
Yep.
you said it, like you hit that milestone and you're so busy. Okay, let's just get to the next milestone. You don't take a second, a minute, an hour, a day, whatever it is. That depends on the size of the kind of game you're playing, right? To celebrate your accomplishments. And when I wrote, I was like, "Oh, that's going to be the most challenging part of the process." And no, I was surprised to find out that the most entrepreneurs, top performers, hungry people are skipping the celebration because they're so focused on
Yep.
like the next milestone, the next milestone, the next milestone. So that you must do that. You must pause it. Because by the way, not just because it's important that we all you need to like pause for, it's because what charges the batteries. I mean,
Right.
think about sleeping, right? What does our brain do when what does it do when we sleep? It filters and cool down and process what we went through the day. People who don't get enough sleep have major problem, depression and lack of focus and all things can literally lead you to suicide thoughts because they don't take the moment to let the body filters and calm down and recharge. If you don't celebrate a milestone in the process, whether it's business or family or your health, you don't charge the batteries.
Yeah, it's important. Like when I talk about, like, I record the milestone, I mean it's minutes. It's only minutes. Okay. I'm not going on vacation. I'm just like, I hit that, cool, man. Praise God.
Yeah,
This is awesome. I'm doing this thing, and then I'm back to work. But I'm telling
perfect.
you, that pause, just that, because I could never have continued. I mean, I was working 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, on this stuff, just endless. But those little things where most people would break, I would just hit those points. Okay, this is good. I can breathe, because it's like I hit it and something would break. It would take me 50 hours to fix it. Okay. And I do them almost consecutively. Okay. And then I fixed it. Okay. Then I'll celebrate. And then you're exactly right. And I know that from my whole entrepreneurial existence, that I wouldn't take vacations. I wouldn't do anything. I just work. That was what it was all about. Who needs a vacation? I got more to do, but when I did take a vacation, when someone would, make me, like, it was awesome, and then you had to kind of learn and re-educate yourself and reteach yourself, like, you need that downtime, you need that recharge, like you
Yes,
said,
recharge.
you
And again, it could be a minute, it
meals,
could be
everything
you
else.
writing down what you said, or thank, God, or whatever you need to do to pause. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Amazing.
it matters, that kind of stuff matters. And I think it's a great takeaway. And I think more entrepreneurs need to hear this kind of stuff. And if you're bringing that to your coaching, that's awesome. I mean, that's got to be, and listen, man, as entrepreneurs, we are stubborn. Okay, we are. I'm extra thick. Okay, I'm extra thick when it comes down to, like, people telling me what to do and everything else. So, but you need that. When you've got that trusted coach, that confidant, someone you're allowing to pour into you and help you get to the next level. Your biggest challenge as a seasoned entrepreneur, or high level performer, C-suite, that kind of thing, is going to be accepting that advice, that help, that encouragement. Just you got to have that. I'll just do what you tell me.
Yes.
You
And by
know.
the way, all brilliant people have coaches.
Right.
It's the middle ground that don't get coaches. We spoke about the bottom, right? We spoke a few times about the people who don't get off the couch. We talk about
Right.
the top performers. We didn't talk about the middle. Most people, they think that coaching is about ego or like don't tell me what to do. Every person who's masterful in business, in sports, they all have coaches, like that.
Right.
Like it's just stupid of you to think that you can get to extraordinary result without a coach because no one else did it. I don't care who you are. If you look at people who have accomplished extraordinary results, they all had mentors, coaches, called whatever it is, right? But every person, every CEO you read a book about says to you, "Oh, I want to thank my mentor when I started."
Yep.
You know,
Yeah, I got the same thing in my books. I give a lot of people credit. I'm like, wasn't for this guy and this guy and this guy,
of course.
you just have to.
Yeah,
You're not doing anything by yourself, even if you think you are.
yeah,
If you take a moment and look around, like who am I rubbing shoulders with? The guys at the gym. Who am I? I'm not. I go early in the morning, right, 5:30. Well, those are the same people every day. And they're getting real workouts in and stuff, and you just get a nod. I always tell people it's just a nod. You point to
yeah,
them and an acknowledgement they're there. But these guys, they kind of keep you coming,
yeah,
because it's like no one else is up at 5:30 in the morning, so you
yeah.
get your workout in every day. So we learn those kind of things. But they have a place in my fitness regimen. That's why I go there and don't do it in my home garage, right,
Yeah,
in my home gym, because I need that additional energy. Part of the energy is part of how I continue to do it.
of
Yeah, I can
course.
work out by myself too at home, but I'd rather go there where there's a different energy,
Because
a
the
different.
environment, exactly. The environment calls people, look, when you walk into a five-star hotel, it might be exactly like a three-star hotel, that it's clean and organized, but there's something about the atmosphere around you that gives you a feeling of luxury, calls you to behave a particular way. When you walk into a gym, the environment around you calls you to be a particular way. Yeah,
Exactly. It's just it matters. It matters who and what you surround yourself with,
yeah,
because that's what you are. You're who you surround you with. You're what you associate with. All those kind of things all come into play. Um, Fantastic. Well,
yes.
Boaz, this has been an awesome conversation, as I knew it would be.
Thank you.
You're talking about your books, your coaching, everything else. How can people get in touch with you, get a hold of your work, and everything else?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm very available. I love helping people, just so you know. And you can find me on LinkedIn, Boaz Gilad at LinkedIn. You can find me on, I have a weekly Substack newsletter, and I have a book you can find on Amazon, etc. So, but those are the three places that I'm always happy to help people. Yeah. Richard, what a great conversation. Thank you.
It was
Amazing.
fantastic. I
Yeah.
really appreciate the time, man. You are awesome at what you do. I love all the insight you gave us and the listeners. And for everybody else, we'll see you on the next STS podcast. Thanks for joining me on the Sharpen the Spear podcast. If you're a manufacturing executive and you're serious about unlocking hidden profit, improving frontline leadership, and taking control of your floor, go to grit2lead.com right now. Run the free Sharpened Impact Simulator and discover your biggest opportunities are hiding. Don't leave millions on the table. Sharpen your spear, lead from the front, and win the floor. Until next time, stay sharp.